Hello, it's me again, and this is Strange Times number 4. I'll just quickly say, I live on a busy road, and the traffic noise is really loud today for some reason. So if you hear trucks and buses and motorbikes and all of that going by, I'll try and edit it out, but if you hear that, just try and ignore it. I'm trying to ignore it, and it's bloody hard. So today's video sort of has a theme to it, just by accident. I just came across these stories randomly, but there's a bit of a UFO theme. I think all of them except one has something to do with the UFO phenomena. And that one that's different is about the Dogman, which I know a few of you are right into. You've probably heard the story before. It's a good one. I don't know much about the Dogman, so it was brand new to me and it creeped me out. But anyway, we shall continue, and here's the first one. After these trucks go by. The DesVergers Incident. On a humid August night in 1952, Scoutmaster D.S. Sonny DesVergers emerged burned and barely coherent from a dense palmetto grove in the South Florida Everglades. He claimed he had encountered an unidentified flying object that discharged a fireball, which left him singed and barely able to see. On the evening of August 19, 1952, hardware store clerk and scoutmaster DesVergers, who was 30, was driving a group of Boy Scouts home when he saw a bright light flash over Military Trail in West Palm Beach in Florida. Thinking it may be a downed plane or car accident, DesVergers pulled onto the shoulder of the highway so he could take a closer look. Armed with a machete and a flashlight, he entered the palmetto grove near where he saw the lights. Leaving the 3 boys in the vehicle with instructions to alert the residents of a nearby farmhouse if he did not return in 15 minutes. After about 4 minutes of hacking through the bush, DesVergers entered a clearing in the grove. The first thing he described was an acute, nauseating smell, and then the feeling of somebody or something watching him. He next experienced a sensation of oven-like heat coming from above. Looking up, DesVergers said he could not see any stars as he was standing beneath a hovering object. The object was circular, DesVergers recounted, dull black with no seams, about 30 feet in diameter, with a height of about 10 feet. A convex dome atop it, and the bottom edge lit with a phosphorescent glow. As he slowly moved backwards, he heard a noise like metal against metal, like a hatch opening, after which a red, flare-like light came from the side of the object and slowly moved towards him. He placed his hands over his face, fists closed, hand over each eye, as the red ball of light grew into a red mist, engulfing him. It was then that he lost consciousness. When he awoke, he was leaning against a tree, but could not see properly as his eyes were burning. Scrambling back through the palmettos, with his eyesight slowly returning to normal, he burst through, incoherent, out onto the highway, where he was met by the boys and the local authorities. The 3 scouts, who were left in the car, witnessed a semicircle of lights descending into the trees, and also saw a red light and DesVergers' flashlight through the bush. That's when the scouts headed to the nearby farmhouse for help. A Palm Beach County deputy and Lake Worth constable responded to the farmer's call for assistance. Returning to the site of the abandoned vehicle, almost an hour after DesVergers first said he saw the lights, the officers and scouts witnessed the scoutmaster emerge from the palmettos waving his machete and babbling incoherently. Quote, "In all my 19 years of law enforcement work, I have never seen anyone as terrified as he was," the deputy is recorded as saying. Back at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, DesVergers and the boys underwent questioning. Officers noted that the hair on DesVergers' forearms was singed and the skin burned. They also noted 3 tiny burn holes in the bill of the Scoutmaster's cap. There was also some physical evidence collected from the site of the incident, in the form of singed grass. The interesting thing about this grass was that it was singed from leaf to root. It wasn't just the exposed part of the plant that was affected. So I thought this was a pretty good case. It came from Project Blue Book, and naturally the Air Force called it a hoax, which is typical, of course, of the authorities to do so. But I'm not so sure, because there was multiple witnesses. There was the kids who say they saw the lights coming down, so they'd have to be in on it. So they would have to be in on the hoax as well. Plus, there was police officers that saw him coming out of the palmettos, so there's no doubt that he stopped the car, got out, went into the palmettos, and came back out. So he was physically at that location. And so to hoax this, there's a lot of people you got to get involved. Plus the cops saw that his arms and skin were burned. I mean, that's going to extremes for a hoax. And don't forget about the grass, singed from, it was basically ash, from leaf tip to root tip. How do you fake that? There's critics who say that he was just trying to make money, which is the usual as well. And he did sell his story to the media, but so what? You know? People sell their stories to the media all the time. This next one is pretty interesting. It's called Glowing Green Ball with a Bag-Like Attachment. An anonymous man was camping with a friend in Wyoming in the US when he saw a green glowing ball about the size of a basketball hovering near to his base, he said. The unnamed man gave a vivid account to the UFO Investigation Network, MUFON, and said it all started when he could not sleep that night and saw 2 large, saucer-shaped craft moving vertically and in unison on the horizon. He then noticed a green glowing object about the size of a baseball, approximately 50 yards away. Now I went back and checked the article because, as you probably noticed as well, he initially said it was the size of a basketball, and then in the next paragraph he's saying it's the size of a baseball. And that's what it says in the article, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And so continuing on, the bloke says, there was something resembling a bag of about 2 feet in length below the ball, but I could never get a clear look at it. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? That's new to me. I've not heard of that before. So you got like a glowing green orb with some sort of attachment hanging below it. The man then tried to wake his friend up, but to no success. So he began observing the objects again. Quote, I tried repeatedly to figure out what this object was doing, with no success. It would go from hovering to vibrating to moving very fast, seemingly at random and with no discernible purpose. I remember saying aloud to myself, this can't be real. Then, as if it heard me or read my thought, it immediately moved east approximately 400 yards, then returned to hover over me at approximately 40 yards. End quote. At this point, he said his memory stopped. Open quote. I woke up in my sleeping bag the next morning. My hunting partner asked if I'd tried to wake him during the night, saying something about lights. I told him it was nothing, just a meteor, because at this point I was sure he wouldn't believe me. He continues, I have a feeling of losing time and memory. My eyes were irritated and red for about 2 days afterwards. My throat and mouth were extremely sore for 4 or 5 days, and my lower lip appeared burned, turning white, then peeling, with 5 small scabs on it. My ears also rang for several days. I have never had any previous UFO experiences, and this episode has left me quite unnerved, he said. So I found that interesting, particularly because of this bag that was hanging under the orb, because I always tend to think of orbs as energy for some reason, and the fact that one of these orbs has something attached to it, it suggests that it's a physical object. So I'll have to keep an eye out for more orb stories with attachments. If you come across any, let me know. Here's one for S.G. Lee. Dogman in Alaska. All of you Dogman fans have probably heard this before. I'm not much of a Dogman guy, so sounds weirdo. So I hadn't heard of this, and it's a really creepy story. So for those who haven't heard it, enjoy. The witness is called Melissa H. The location was Matanuska Valley County. I said that very weird. Matanuska Valley County, Alaska, 1998. She was on her way home from work at around 2 a.m. and about 10 minutes from home. The incident occurred on a remote part of the northernmost section of Trunk Road between the towns of Palmer and Wasilla. She was taking things slow due to the ice on the road when her headlights faintly illumined a dark, very tall figure ahead. She at first took it to be a moose, but as she slowed down and drew closer, she could see that it was in fact standing upright on 2 legs, and she could see that it was too slim to be a bear and had spikes running down its neck and back. In her own words, "I could clearly see its wolfish muzzle and large upright ears. The spikes on its back were in fact clumps of fur. Its spine curved in a smooth, very natural-looking way. It was standing in the ditch, inches from the pavement. Because I was focused on its upper body, I do not recall anything about its back legs or if it had a tail. I did see its front legs though, very doggy-looking, hanging awkwardly down and slightly toward its front, exactly as you'd expect if a dog stood upright. While it clearly had a canine look, there was still something off about it that I cannot articulate. It was perfectly still, and at this point, given the proximity to Halloween, I was quite convinced it was some sort of Halloween prop, because it was clearly not any kind of existing animal. I was deeply impressed and gently stepped on the brakes, intending to stop and examine it closely. Then it turned its head towards me. In the tiny fraction of a second that it took for it to swivel its head, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. The fluidness of its movement removed any doubt that this was some kind of prop. It was horribly, terrifyingly alive. The pale, off-white glow of its eyeshine in the headlights destroyed any possibility of a human in a costume. I think I sat there gaping at it in shock for a few seconds. The car barely moving, but still inching closer. As I was almost upon it, I think it could have leaned forward and touched the car if it had wanted to. I had to look up to see its face. Again, I'm a bad judge of such things, but I am 5'4", and it was a hell of a lot taller than me. Tall like a polar bear standing. 7 feet, maybe 8. I really can't say. I snapped out of my trance and slammed on the gas. The car fishtailed, and I prepared myself for death by monster, as I was certain I'd end up in the ditch. But the tyres caught the pavement, and I drove like a complete maniac all the way home. I did not look back. Imagine seeing something like that on your own, in the middle of nowhere. That really would be terrifying. This next one is about shapeshifting or shapeshifters. And it's got a UFO connection in that these reports came from Rendlesham Forest in the UK, where that famous, everyone knows about Rendlesham. And so here we go. It is called Supernatural Forest Creatures That Alter Their Forms. I can't remember if I made that one up or not, but what a terrible title. I'll take the blame. Let's push on. It's by, actually, just quickly mention, it's by Nick Redfern, who's a contributor at Mysterious Universe. And it took me a while to get into Nick Redfern, because I don't know why. I don't know why it took me a while, but it did. But he's got a lot of very unique tales that he's collected from all over the world. And that's why I like him, because he's not like me, just regurgitating stuff that's on the internet. He actually gets out there and he finds this original stuff. So, hats off to Nick Redfern. And if you like this story, do check out that link, because I summarize all of these stories. So if you like any of the stories, have a look at the links, because you'll get a lot more information. Okay, let's go. Rendlesham Forest in the English county of Suffolk is most famous for the Rendlesham UFO encounter. However, it is little known that there have also been reports of strange shape-shifting entities within the forest for many years. Sam Holland had an encounter with a bizarre creature as he walked his little dog through the woods in 1956. Holland described the monster as part monkey, part dog, and part bear, and that it had a length of around 10 feet. Neither Holland nor Harry the dog were harmed by the lumbering beast, which, after briefly glaring at the petrified pair, vanished into the woods. A near-identical animal was seen 7 years later in the same stretch of forest by Margaret Cushing. The only difference, and a very significant difference, being that the animal suddenly changed into the form of a hideous bat-winged gargoyle, which soared off into the dark skies above. Like Mothman, I guess. Cushing said that as the beast changed shape, there was a shimmering effect surrounding it. Tom Potter, a local man, witnessed a large monkey-like animal. As Potter drove to work at around 4:30 a.m., he passed the fringes of Rendlesham Forest and caught sight of a creature that was not dissimilar to a chimpanzee. In fact, that is exactly what he thought the creature was. As he slowed his vehicle to a near halt and watched it amble along the road at a leisurely pace until it suddenly stopped and turned to look at Potter, whose vehicle at the time was moving at a speed of barely a couple of miles per hour. According to Potter, the chimpanzee dropped onto its four limbs, was briefly lit up by a white light, and took on the form of a sleek and shiny black cat, then suddenly raced into a nearby field and was not seen again. It's these sort of reports, and they're not uncommon, that really confuse the topic of cryptozoology. Apart from Bigfoot, because I really like, what's his name? Lloyd Pye. I always want to call him Lord Pye, I don't know why. Actually, I do know why, because his name's Lloyd. Anyway, I digress in a totally pointless direction. So yeah, I like his idea about how Bigfoot sightings could be remnants of the Neanderthals. But I think if you believe these sort of reports, and I think I do, then there's something else interacting with us that is non-physical, but it appears to us as different physical entities. Anyway, there's a lot to think about there. Top Harvard professor says space object could be aliens on reconnaissance. Everybody's heard about this. It's that strange object that came into the solar system and then took off. They named it Oumuamua. No doubt I've got that pronunciation wrong, but you know what I mean. So I thought I'd include this because this article is basically, it's about, or includes, a bunch of quotes from the head of astronomy at Harvard University, whose name is Avi Loeb. And it kind of just confines, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a neat little package of what some of the scientists, have suggested it could be, in their own words, and it's in layman's terms, obviously. And so let's go. This is all Avi Loeb. First, as it rotated, its brightness changed by at least a factor of 10, which implies that it's at least 10 times longer than it is wide. That's a very extreme shape compared to the asteroids or comets that we found in the solar system. In addition, it has no trail around it, or any traces of gases like carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide to a very tight limit. At the same time, the object showed a deviation from the orbit that one would expect, so there was an extra push exhibited by the orbit. The possibility is that this object was extremely thin, less than a millimeter thick, and that it was pushed by sunlight. And that's what we proposed in a scientific paper that was published in November 2018, where we suggested that it might be a light sail, which is a technology that we're currently developing for the purposes of propulsion in space. The advantage of this technology, where you basically push on a sail with light being reflected off it, just like the wind is reflected off the sail of a sailboat. The advantage is that you don't need to carry the fuel with you, and you can, in principle, reach a fraction of the speed of light with this technology. So we suggested that maybe this object is artificial in origin, and of course that got a lot of media attention. Mr. Loeb claimed that the probe was likely not on a random orbit. He said, "A much more likely scenario is that such a probe is not on a random orbit, but on an orbit that is plunging towards the core of the solar system to look around and see if there is any life here. And it's potentially of interest for other civilizations to get inside the habitable zones of stars and see what's going on there. I would think it's much more likely that it's on a reconnaissance mission." And when you think about that, it's just amazing. And I'll finish this one on a sad note. As I'm sure everybody has heard, Stanton T. Friedman has died on the 13th of May, 2019, aged 84. Yeah, I just remember him as a really solid, credible researcher. And it would have taken a bit of bravery for him to openly start studying this subject, considering he's from academia. He's a physicist, or was a physicist. I mean, it really does take courage. I stay anonymous just on this channel, and I'm nobody. So I respect that. Anyway, I believe in afterlife, and he's off on a new adventure. And that is all I have for today, my friends, and I apologize for being late with this one. My free time is very limited for the next probably at least 2 or 3 months. I'm also still working on some narration type videos, so these ones are good for just ticking the channel along, these Strange Time videos, but I like the creativity of the other style of video that I do. I've got a couple of projects that I'm slowly working through, but it's going to take some time before I can get them up. And so with that said, I bid you goodbye, and I'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves.